Welcome to Living Not So Fabulously.
So, David, you have a confession to make. The floor is yours.
Hi, my name is David Otten, and I didn't watch The Golden Girls until 2004.
And we frequently fall asleep watching true crime stories, which brings us to today's guest. Patrick Hinds is the fabulous force behind the hit podcast True Crime Obsessed and the host of the Golden Girls Deep Dive, blending heart, humor, and true crime realness.
He's also the author of Failure is Not an Option, a hilarious and heartfelt memoir about reinvention and resilience. From growing up with little to owning a slice of New York today, Patrick proves that being unapologetically queer can be your best investment. Thank you for joining us, Patrick.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Of course, excited to talk to you.
Definitely. So you shared that you grew up very poor as the second of 4 children by a working mom who also was raised in poverty. So we're curious, how did that affect your perception of how money works?
Well, it's so interesting. I was also raised by a gay mom. My mom, when she left my dad, she came out of the closet. So there's a lot going on there. You know, my mom was newly out. She was newly discovered she was an alcoholic and went into the program and was working a full-time job and raising 4 kids with no money, no help from my father. And I was, it served me in a lot of ways because I just developed a strong work ethic really young. I knew, early on that if I was going to have any money, I was going to have to make my money. I learned young that I loved to work. I loved to work hard. I liked sort of being the steward of my own financial future. But at the same time, I never had any financial guidance at all. I mean, it was very much, I was living paycheck to paycheck from the time I was 14 years old. I had no sense of how to save, how to invest. I literally never learned how to balance a checkbook, because I was of the age where checks became sort of obsolete as I was coming into my adulthood. And I had a checking account when I was young, but never, kind of by the grace of God, things didn't bounce, or if they did, you paid the overdraft fee. And it was a mess, boys. It was a real mess until I was in my late 20s and I met my husband who really, loved me and helped me get it all together financially.
So you did also share at one point in time that in your 20s, you were terrified about facing some realities about your financial situation, things like your credit score, the bills. Maybe you could elaborate on that.
My early 20s and my early to mid 20s were really bad. I ended up having to, get apartments that didn't do credit checks, or, I didn't have a credit card. Really, I didn't have a credit card until we got married and my husband gave me a credit card in his name. I mean, it was that bad. I mean, life was good. Life was fun. I was living my life, but not responsibly. And it is kind of a miracle that all these years later, I've ended up in a very solid financial position because without Steve, I don't think that would have happened.
Do you have any advice for somebody who may be in that situation today, who is kind of, for lack of a better way of saying it, maybe deer in the headlights feeling when they think about their money? And, whether you're living in New York City or you're living in Ames, Iowa, right? You can still have that kind of similar experience with saying, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, there were things I didn't know, that there were programs that were designed to help people who can't afford to pay their loans. That for me was the big thing. My loans were like in the $80,000 range. And I remember looking at the bill and being like, I can't do, I'm just going to put this over here. Rather than investigating there's got to be resources out there. And there are ways that you can get, there are ways that you can pay what you can pay. Ultimately they want you to pay something, and there are ways to do. There is help, and there are resources, and I wish I had investigated that further. Because I was concerned about saving money as opposed to learning how to manage the money that I had and paying the bills that I needed to pay. And I think the big advice would be brave, be brave. Open the envelope. That's the advice. Don't be so afraid of the bill that you don't open it. Open the envelope. Oftentimes there's resources on the bill itself, that if you can't pay this or you need help or whatever, call this number, go to this website, and take it seriously, because not everybody's going to meet a Steve who's going to, help you get your financial life together.
And at the very least, it helps you prepare for when you open up the Oscar or the Grammy envelope and you announce the winner.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Practice for that.
Exactly. I really do mean
Right.
it. Like, if anybody can take one thing away from my story, open the envelope. That was the thing I was so scared to do. Open the and I remember the day that my husband sat me down with the stack of bills that I had put in the corner. He's like, "We're just gonna go through this. We're just gonna see what's here," you know. And there really were resources on almost every bill. It really they want you to pay your bills and open the envelope.
Ironic enough.
You're right. They definitely do want you to pay your bills. They'd rather have that happen than you declare bankruptcy. So you've
Truly.
shared that you've reached a level of success today, and you've attributed much of that to the fact that you really leaned into this idea of being authentically yourself. Did you ever feel the pressure to code switch or change so that you were more marketable?
So, yeah, I mean, not really other than from myself. So, when I became a full-time podcaster, I was sort of starting from the beginning. I'd been making a podcast as a hobby for a long time in the world of theater, which is like to be like an out screaming queen gay guy in a theater podcast makes sense. But when I was like, I want to see if I can like make a living doing this, and I really wanted to make a marketable, potentially popular true crime podcast, I really was wondering if there was space for somebody who sounded like me, somebody with my life experience. I wanted to be able to share my experience on the podcast. There was no world in which I was ever going to sort of live in the closet or try to change my voice, but I did wonder if it would just be a non-starter that a person like me could find success in that world. And I think what I really found, podcasting is such a personal, intimate medium that I think listeners really are looking for authenticity from the hosts that they listen to. And
Yeah.
I think that like right from the beginning, both myself and my co-host Jillian, we really just were our authentic selves, and people really resonated with that. And I want to also give credit to the other creators, really popular creators in the true crime space, who not only made space for us, but really supported and encouraged us. A lot of them were straight men, that really were like, "No, you guys are great. Keep going. We'll help you." We were able to pay that back and pay that forward as we got bigger and bigger and bigger.
Nice.
And I've landed in a financial position that I never could have imagined when I was, in my 20s, really struggling to make ends meet.
So hold that thought, Patrick. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back. If you're just tuning in to Living Not So Fabulously, we're interviewing serial podcast host, author, and New York City property owner, Patrick Hinds.
That
So,
is a
Patrick,
wild thing to hear said out loud. Like New York City property owner. Oh my God.
It is interesting because especially with the way that property prices have increased in the city. So in your book, Failure is Not an Option, you dig into some of the mistakes and the reinvention that you have gone through. Is there a money mistake that you still maybe feel a little embarrassed about, but when you look back, you think to yourself, well, that actually did help me become the person I am today?
Yeah, I mean, there was a time when our daughter came to us that I really wanted to be a stay-at-home dad somehow. And I decided I was going to open a home daycare, you guys. And we did it. I spent a year of my life, training and studying and figuring out how to do it. I quit my job. We gave away everything we had except for our couch, essentially, and turned our little two-bedroom apartment in Harlem into a home daycare that I was so miserable running that we closed it like 1 week after we opened. And there we were, me with
wow.
no job, no furniture, like just like staring at the walls of our apartment with a baby
Lots
and
of
a
baby
husband being
toys.
like lots and lots of baby cubbies out the wazoo. And just sort of being like, what are we gonna do now? And it was only really in that moment that my husband looked at me and was like, well, we're at the bottom, like all you've ever wanted to do is be a podcaster. All you've ever thought you could do is be a podcaster. Go be a podcaster. And that was really the beginning of the changing of everything.
The origin story started in a daycare.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
That, I really appreciate that because so many people feel like once they've committed, they have to power through it, right? They have to power through the struggle. They keep on hearing that story of he was 3 inches away from the vein of gold that turned somebody else into a multimillionaire. And you just keep on
Yeah.
thinking, I'm just a little bit further, just a little bit further, just more. But sometimes saying, this isn't working, I'm going to try
Yeah.
something else is actually the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, for so many years, I'd forced myself to do jobs I didn't like because I thought I was making more money than I would, I was a hotel concierge in New York City, which was an interestingly lucrative job. I was a bartender at a steakhouse for, 8 or 9 years, and that was a lucrative job, but I was not happy. I was not creatively or really in any way fulfilled. And so yeah, when the daycare happened and I was so unhappy from like moment one, I just was like, there's no way I can force myself to do this every day for the rest of my life. And luckily, I mean, find yourself a partner that supports you, because thank God my husband was like, he had just finished a math degree. And he had gotten a job, and we were in an okay, like he could afford to float us for maybe a year. And he was like, take that year and try to take this dream and make it a reality. And by the
And
grace of goddess, it worked out.
So it sounds like your husband has been very critical in where you've gotten today. Can you sort of elaborate on what that means to you?
Oh my God. I mean, even today, my husband Steve is the most supportive man and a great dad, an amazing partner. And I can some people think I'm a little nuts. I have these really big ideas and no real idea how to execute them, but I will sort of say, like, I really want to do this. I really believe in this idea. And Steve, 90% of the time will say, let's try it. Let's go for it. And even now, I mean, with the amount of work that I have and with the podcast business that I have, and I'm doing this live tour. I'm doing 40 cities, which is a lot of time away from home and a lot of time away from parenting. My husband, I always say, he's not just supportive, he's encouraging. He
Mhm.
just believes in me, he believes in us. He runs the whole back end of our business. So it's not like I'm doing this alone. I'm the front facing part of it, but he does everything behind the scenes. And I think that he just really believes in me. He believes in my vision, I think. And yeah, I mean, I'm very, very lucky to have such a supportive and encouraging husband.
we jokingly say that means that you're the lead singer and your husband is either the bassist or the drum player. Because that's John and I always say that if we were ever in a band, and sometimes that is your business, right? John would be the lead singer and I would be the backup.
I'm Stevie Nicks.
Yeah. Well, there was this meme that was going around the internet for a while that said, within every gay couple, there's one person with 10,000 Instagram followers and one person who runs the Google Calendar. Like it's very much like that dynamic. Which is not to say, my husband was a professional actor for 10 years before we got together. He was nominated for awards and he toured, and he very much has like main character energy as well. But he also loves numbers and he loves organization and he loves a spreadsheet and he loves a Google Calendar. And, I think that like running this small business that we have has been a good opportunity for him to flex all those muscles.
Maybe that's the correlation. If you are attracted to mathy things, you're attracted to the back of the stage.
I don't know.
Because he loves math, and we make him do that in our business.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. There's
Yes.
there's some attacks on same-sex marriage these days, and there are some states who are trying to define what natural marriage means in their state constitutions. What would you say to those people who say that you might be happy, but it's not the same? It's not a true marriage because you're not opposite sex.
I mean, it's just, well, I would say, yeah, you're right. It isn't the same marriage. Like we like marriages look in many there. You know what I mean? There are heterosexual marriages. There are gay marriages. There are interracial marriages. There are intergenerational marriages. Marriage doesn't look like one thing, but marriage is marriage is marriage. Commitment is marriage. And I grew up in a time. I was saying my mom is gay. My mom and her wife were the first two people to get a marriage license in their town in 2004 when gay marriage became legal in Massachusetts. And I was
Very cool.
raised in that era of people trying to say, call it a civil union. It's to say, who cares? As long as you even have mostly the same rights, it matters. I have a daughter. If my daughter shouldn't have to go to school and explain to her friends why I have a civil union and her friends are married. We are all the same, all of our There are some gay people who for a long time didn't want to be boxed into
Mhm.
heteronormativity, and fine, that's fine. But everybody should have the opportunity to have access to the same thing, and legally, it also matters.
Mhm.
Marriage means one thing, a civil union means something else, and we all are need to be entitled to the same rights and responsibilities. And that's the part of marriage I think that sometimes gets lost too, is that it's not just about rights, it's also about responsibilities. We as married people have responsibilities to each other, to the state, to our community, to our faith communities. It's to me it's so obvious and it's a no-brainer. And also I would say we have a history now of seeing that gay marriage happens and the sky doesn't fall. Everything is fine. Communities get stronger. Faith communities get stronger. School boards get stronger. I mean, everything gets better when gay people are seen as equal to everybody else.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
you put
Patrick,
me on my soapbox, boys.
yeah, that's perfect. Like it, loved it, definitely. There's one question that we love to ask all of our guests, and this can come from something that's personal to your story, or maybe something related to your business. What is one piece of personal finance advice that you would share with the LGBT community?
Um, God, it's hard to say. It's hard to say one thing because I've been on all sides of it. I've been extremely poor. I've been extremely middle class, and I've had the fortune to be in a position in my life now where I have some money. And I think that I think one piece of advice. It feels weird for me to give any financial advice, but I would say take your finances seriously. I guess that's sort of where I come from is don't be afraid. Finances can be scary. Invest in yourself, invest in
Mm.
your family. If you can, if you are in a position to buy property, buy property. If you can just squirrel away a little bit of money, squirrel away a little bit of money. If you can invest in a 401k, invest in a 401k. But I would just say, don't be afraid to try to understand the world of finance. That was always,
Mm.
it felt like such a big barrier of entry to me. But I think as gay people, some of us maybe just have that. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. You're good enough and you're smart enough. Don't let finance scare you. Just, find where you fit in the world of finance and do your best.
Love that.
Yeah, I love that. One of the ways that you are actually funding this life that you have with your family now is through things other than just your podcast. So you have a tour coming up. Would you maybe
Yeah.
share us a little bit about that and maybe some of the upcoming dates?
Yeah, so I'm doing a 40 city tour. It's called An Evening with Patrick Hinds, and it's a really, really fun night. So basically, it's a whole evening where, for an hour, I tell a story. It's a true story about a night that I spent with Golden Girls icon B. Arthur when I was in college, and
Ooh.
I was her host and guide for the weekend. I just wanted her to like and love me. The more I wanted it, the more she hated me. She just got drunk and was mean to me, and it's a really, really funny story. I love telling it. I have this wonderful drag performer playing B. Arthur via video from beyond the grave there to sort of tell her side of the story. So that's 1 hour. And the rest of it is really meant to be like a community building experience. So before the show, there's like a pre-party. We kind of just hang out in the room and there's drinks and we get to know each other. I do my show. And then after the show, there's an after party at the venue bar where we just go to the bar and we take pictures
Nice.
and we have drinks if that's your journey. But we, basically just spend another hour together, just kind of hanging out and getting to know each other. It's a super fun night. I've done 20 of them already. People are having such a great time. I've got 20 more to go. In the month of June, I'm going to be in Boston on June 6th, St. Louis on June 23rd, and I'm doing my hometown show in New York City on June 26th for Pride weekend. So it's the
Yay.
Thursday of
Nice.
Pride weekend in New York City, and I'm very, very excited for that show.
Very cool.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Patrick. We really appreciate you joining us today.
Thanks for having me, guys. This has been so fun. I never thought I'd be asked to speak about money, but here we are.
Wow. Patrick has so much energy. You can totally tell that he's a podcaster.
Yeah,
Right?
definitely.
So, what was your favorite part?
I think that my favorite part was the line of the show. Open the envelope. And no, there may not be a gold statue waiting for you on the other side, but we also know that not opening the envelope is kind of like sticking your head in the sand. And we know that from that, There are only two outcomes.
right? You either suffocate because you can't breathe, or you face your fears and you succeed. So use today's episode of Living Not So Fabulously as your opportunity to face whatever difficult financial fears you have in your life right now. Face those head on so you can succeed.
This content was not intended to be financial advice and should not be used as a substitute for professional financial services.